Thanks for having me. When I found out, I didn't really know what 1 million cups was, and I went on and looked, and it was talking about the 1 million cups of coffee that you share. And I was a little nervous because I actually don't drink coffee, so I didn't know if that disqualified me from talking here this morning. But thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here. Again, my name is Zach Davey. I'm one of the co-founders at Twerk. I've got a long experience, a long history in the entrepreneurial world. Today marks my 40th day doing this. So thank you for inviting such an experienced veteran in the world. Excited to be here, though. I will say I wasn't honored when my team nominated me for this, because we were talking about, well, who should present? And they said, well, I think, Zach, you would be the best fit for this because you're really loud. It's like, wow, that's reassuring. I'm glad that was my qualification this morning. But I think we need to get one thing cleared up before we get any further down the line, and that refers to our name. So first of all, it said Twerk, and we get a lot of comments about this. We get it, like we know it's kind of weird, and it sounds sort of awkwardly similar to torque, as in a torque wrench. We get that all the time, and it's just what it is. We're okay with it. It's a risk we're willing to take. Are our slides working?
If they aren't, actually.
Well, that's not okay. Hey, Kyle, can you help? I don't know why this isn't. We good? Okay. Let's get in motion. All right. So it's a little embarrassing, but we're all right with it. So our inspiration. So this is Kyle's house. He bought this about 5 years ago. And like any new homeowner, was amped to get going on his projects. Wanted to do do-it-yourself projects, renovations of the house, but he was caught in this the conflict between, do I buy a tool or do I rent it? On one side, it didn't make sense to buy a tool brand new for a project he was only going to use it once for. He's going to buy that tile saw, do his bathroom, and then he's done, never use it again, it collects dust. But it's also hard to justify paying for a rental of it when he didn't know how long he was going to need it. It's expensive, he's time boxed, so it's like, what do I do in this dilemma? What's the right decision? And that's kind of when it hit him that maybe there could be a third option that didn't even exist right now, that looked more like being able to rent it from his neighbor's garage. Thinking, there's probably thousands of tools out there in the market today around me in my neighborhood that I have no idea exist. And so why doesn't that exist? Why don't we make that happen? And so the idea was, what if we made sort of the average handyman tool owner an entrepreneur? We gave them that ability to share their stuff in that way. So we kind of have four main things that we're wanting to create. One, we want to create a sharing economy, a marketplace on that sharing economy. We've already seen proof of this concept in ideas like Uber and Airbnb, where we're sort of the beneficiaries of them proving out that, yeah, this idea works. People are actually willing to use their own stuff and share it and kind of become entrepreneurs themselves on a small scale. And so we're wanting to build on top of that in a different sector, reapply that concept. And we think Nebraska's like a great spot for this because Nebraskans are really good at sharing. We already do that. That's kind of part of our DNA. We're a people that are willing to help others. And so we think that Nebraska is a great test place for that to happen. Additionally, we think that there's sort of this technology that when we bring it to the market, connects people in a unique way. So a lot of times we think about technology that connects people like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, those things, but that's all virtual. And we think that the best technology to connect people is when it actually brings you face to face with somebody that you otherwise wouldn't have met. So it actually creates an avenue for you to meet people and build relationship with them. And so that's kind of one of the ideas that we want to illustrate with the sharing economy. The other part of that, so the second thing there, we've got where we're targeting every man's tool. We believe that most people have all this kind of inventory that's just dormant, that sits around in their house, that never gets used, that they could put to work, if you will, on the site, that they haven't even thought of. And really, we've got a case where there's such a terrible use of capital. People spend their money on something when utter redundancy all around them. And there's no reason to own this. We've been caught in the idea that we need to own everything that we're going to use. And so we're saying, no, that actually doesn't need to be the case. There's ways that we can share with one another. The third thing, we think that we can reinvigorate the market for rentals. It's already a $10 billion market just for tools and small equipment as is today. They expect in 3 years from now, in 2019, it could be a $13 billion market. And a lot of that is driven by sort of the culture surrounding do-it-yourself. We see that all over, whether it's through Pinterest, House, through YouTube videos on how to do projects, TV shows that people are watching on home repairs, renovations. Like, there's a culture that's been building, especially over the last 5 years or so, that I feel like positions this really well to work. People want to do these projects on their own. And so we think we can actually grow the market size for this as people begin to say, I want to do this myself. What's the best mechanism to do that? How do I get the tools I need to do these projects? And then fourth, we know that people are already willing to rent. People do that. There's already a huge rental industry. And so we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. We're just taking what's sort of the special ingredients of what exists and making it available to the average consumer. So some of our insights that we have, kind of the key highlights here. The rental experience is painful. Like, it's a hard, nobody really enjoys it as it is today through the traditional brick and mortar store. Some of the other thoughts, people buy tools that they will never use again. Buy it once, it sits around, collects dust, and rusts. 3, people would consider renting tools they have. That's an option that they would consider when they're just lying around. People don't rent those tools today, though, because there's no mechanism to do that. They don't have an option that exists for them to really do that effectively. So kind of what we say is, let's create that marketplace. Let's create that mechanism for that to happen. So the multiplier effect here is the idea that, hey, you buy a saw, you buy a chop saw or a miter saw that you're going to trim out your newly renovated kitchen. You do your project, now it sits there. Well, with an application like what Twerk is about, you start to see that multiply out, and now one asset that you own can actually pay for itself in just a few rentals and actually become a source of a revenue stream and a profit center instead of a liability in a sense. So then we start to build out this network of individuals that have these tools that they list out there, and all of a sudden you see very quickly that changes the landscape of the industry there. So for the last year, we've been working on this idea probably since the summer of 2014 was when we first sat down and talked about it. Since then, we've been doing market research. We worked with NG to kind of develop our business plan, what we see that going forward looks like. We got some seed capital from them. We launched kind of a pre-video to say, hey, this is what we're doing. This is what we want to do, trying to garner awareness and support from the community. And then a big part of that was that the 4 of us on the team said, hey, I think we believe in this enough to actually make the jump. And so over the last few months, we've all moved to doing this full time, to whatever that means. But so Cody, Kyle, Kent, and I, we're all in on this idea right now. And so we're really excited about this. The market that we see right now, there's kind of these 3 main groups. There's the DIYers, home or hobbyists that we've got that we discussed a little bit before. Then we've got this group of 75 million homeowners, owner-occupied homes where a ton of the building projects, the renting that's done is done for those people. And so that's a kind of a huge demographic. But then the giant, the 800-pound gorilla in the room are commercial contractors. And if you look at kind of the volume of transactions that happen, they've got almost 2/3 of the market comes from contractors renting out equipment to do things like we're seeing all over the Haymarket here. Perfect. That's great. Yeah, I can. Just, if you guys want to stand up, the team, I can introduce them real quick. So Kyle King here is our CEO and kind of the guy that had the idea to begin with. And then we've got Cody Leach here. He's kind of the head developer, does all the stuff that I have no idea what he's actually doing, but it sounds really good and really intelligent. Then we've got Kent Sievers, and he heads up kind of the marketing and sales aspect of what we're about. So this is the fellowship, if you will. So we want to turn this over though to you guys. I know you probably have more questions. If you see a blank stare on my face, it's not because I don't know. It's probably just because it's confidential information that I can't disclose. No, actually, I don't know. So, but we'd love to hear your questions.
I'm very intrigued with it. What's your revenue?
It's a great question. So right now, kind of where we've started is that to make this work, we need to be competitive against sort of the brick and mortar box stores that already exist out there. So we looked at, okay, let's put together a pricing model that says, this is what, if you go to one of those brick and mortar locations, you find that and you say, okay, they start at usually like a 4-hour window, and that's your time box. So we said, let's extend that out to a full day. Every transaction is going to be based on a full day rental. You gotta start there. So, because the two main factors are price and time. So we extend out the time, and then we say, let's take the 4-hour rental rate that they offer and do a 20% discount to that and extend the time length. So that's kind of how we feel like we can create a competitive marketplace to begin with.
But how do you generate?
So then we generate our revenue based off of doing a percentage of that transaction. So if you're an owner of a tool, you list it on the site, you rent it out, we take a percentage of that, similar to if you're selling on Amazon or what Uber does.
But once the guy and his neighbor develop a relationship, then are you going to
So there's always that option where somebody says, hey, I don't really need to use this site. I know Bill now, he's got the tool I need, and I can go to him directly. One of the benefits that we see of this though is that we already know there's a lot of people. I have a lot of friends that own stuff. I'm a little hesitant to ask them about something, especially if it's an expensive piece of equipment, because there's no protection. There's no formal relationship there. And so we're saying, actually, we think this enables people to do that more effectively and not have the awkward, like, what if I break it? Because there's protections built into the app. So there's always the risk of somebody saying, I don't need the app anymore, but really we think it gives them protection to enable those kinds of transactions to happen.
I know a lot of do-it-yourselfers, some of them are the people who have like fanciest, like throw it in the back of the truck, kind of like toolbox, right? Everything's just a complete disaster.
Yep.
And they're searching for every tool when they need it. And then I know people who are like shining the tools when they're done using it. How do you account for that?
I think that's a fair question. To be honest, there's some of those things where we're gonna have to see how that plays out. We're gonna set expectations for if you're using the tool, that you have to be able to meet sort of this basic level of maintenance if you're providing it to someone, it's got to be at a certain standard. But also, if you're borrowing it, it needs to be returned at that same standard. So, to be honest, it's going to be a bit of a proof of concept as we go forward. Because you said there's a huge range of people that do that. I think we'll, similar to what Uber does, when there's certain requirements that they have for somebody to actually drive for them. So yeah, tons of people own a car. Well, it doesn't mean just because you own a car, it's the right car for that. So I think starting to narrow down those qualifications is part of that process.
Also, I should mention, also we do have, in our plans, we do have a review engine. So basically, after a rental is complete, we should be able to weed out the bad apples in the bunch just by getting reviews and feedback from both sides. So lenders and borrowers should have some sort of review system where we can say, look, you've had 3 strikes and all 3 of these went really bad. Let's get rid of you. You at least are suspended for a while.
Right. Milan?
So I work right across from you. Let's see if you know really
Sorry.
the truth.
Sorry.
So I'd like to know, so how are you doing with the culture build of your startup? So we can just talk a little about that and you and Kyle and thinking about them as you're building the culture.
Right. I think, well, I think it should be stated that, well, 3 of us actually went to the same high school, and then Cody's the outsider coming in. So,
But we welcome him with loving arms.
yeah.
Most of the time.
So, I mean, I think some of the culture was already established with, friends that go way, way back. But extending that to kind of a work relationship has been, it's been a tug and war. I've worked with Cody for longer than any of these guys, even though I've been friends with these guys for longer. But I just think that our culture has been, a lot of us pull long hours at night. We come in later than some other startups do, but we actually, are working kind of later into the night, and it's a constant conversation. We're always on Slack having conversations about what's coming in, what's going out. What's the next?
Speedway is testing fire alarms.
Did you approve that?
No, I didn't.
This was like his emergency exit plan. It's a terrible presentation. Get out.
So as we kind of continue to grow that connection with one another, it's really just about setting some boundaries in our startup life versus our personal life, but also realizing that we are a startup right now, and it does come down to, we signed up for this. This is a full-time job, we passed a full-time job, and we're working extra hours and long hours to get done what we want to get done here. So, does that answer your question?
I was wondering about that, if the person takes it as a Decatur $900 tool and they break it, are you guys paying the original owner? Is the person renting it the one paying? How are you handling it?
It's a great question. So right now what we have as of today is a deposit requirement. So allows the owner to say, hey, this is a $1,000 tool. I need assurances of at least a $500 deposit plus the cost of the rental in there, so that we kind of become the third party that holds that form until the tool's returned and say, yep, it's in good shape. I'll return that deposit. So that's kind of out of the chute what we have. We're working right now with our insurance broker to put together basically a transaction level insurance policy. So similarly, if you go to Enterprise and you rent a car for 3 days, where you can get, I want to buy a 3-day policy for me renting this car from you. So to be able to have that at that level for both the borrower and the lender to say, I want to buy that protection. I think in the meantime, once we do the beta launch, we'll have a policy that sort of extends to the third party. So, hey, if your saw breaks, we're going to work with you to figure it out. We're going to make sure that that's covered. Go ahead.
I had a thought, his question and covered mine, but then I have a follow-up. So on Uber, you get a picture of the person that you're renting it from. Are you making sure because you don't want to give a crazy person a saw and have it be for some crime, and then you guys check in the middle. How are you dealing with stuff like that?
Like the actual vetting of the people that are on the site and those sorts of things. We will probably do a detailed FBI background check. No, I'm just kidding. We won't do that. I think it's a similar issue that you run into with Craigslist or something. You don't know up front necessarily who that's going to be. But I think even with, the stuff that we're going to get for the payment processing, we're going to have their credit card information into the system. We're going to know who they are. And so it's sort of like somebody said, well, what if somebody just walks up with a tool? Well, then we're going to go turn them into the police. We have that information to be able to say that's a crime and you can't just do that. And so up front, I don't know, do you guys have other thoughts on that? I think it's...
Just the notion that as far as location-based stuff, if you're looking for a tool, kind of my initial thought was a Tinder model of saying well, it's within a mile. There's a hammer drill within a mile of you or within 2 miles of you. So you know how far you're going to have to drive without saying, it is at 2030 Smith Street in the garage. Here's all the other tools they have. So everyone that knows what tools are in there, we have their credit card information and all their personal information. So it kind of keeps them accountable that way as well.
Other questions or thoughts?
Have you thought about the scope of what people are borrowing? I mean, obviously limited to tools, but you start talking about cars, pickup truck, is that a tool? How about a thermal projector
Yeah.
for a presentation? Business items like that.
I mean, I think, so that was one of the things, I remember our first time we ever sat down and talked about it, I was like, why are we limiting this to tools? Like, there's so many things, so many assets that people have just sitting around that never gets used. So I think for us is, well, Amazon started with books. Like, that's what got them in the door, created a platform where people said, oh, I can work with that. And then now it's everything. And so I think my hope is, yeah, let's start with this because I think it's a niche that doesn't exist. But in my mind, there's no reason it can't go to, well, if I own it and I want to rent it, I'm going to do it on this site. So I think that's exactly right.
So and we're also accepting anything from a shovel to an excavator. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like.
Yeah, I have a buddy that runs a landscaping company in Omaha. It's like, I've got a bunch of stuff that for like 4 months out of the year, I don't use it, and like I would love to put it on the site. Okay, that's sweet. If you want to put a $20,000, backhoe on there, that's awesome. So, well, that's our cue.
All right, well, I have another question. And that's going to be I will take the last question, which
Okay.
is always at we know about what can we as a community do for you guys?
Awesome. So I think one of the things that we're really wanting to start getting going now is just transactions. So if you have any project you're thinking about doing, and you're like, well, I don't have the tool that I need, we'd love to encourage you to go out to the site, share, like our page on Facebook, share it, see what's going on with it. Actually go out to the site and rent a tool. If you use the code there, LNK1MC, through the end of March, there's a free rental available to you guys. So we'd love to have you go out and just use it. Give us feedback. If the tool that you're looking for isn't on there, there's a spot where you can actually go and request a tool. So let us know, and we'll go track it down for you. So we would love to have you guys go out and use the site. And we're launching in April, so it's when the beta happens.